Gavin is the the team leader of the inspector, the Western Power Inspectorate. So I'll let him explain what he does and what Western Power do, but we're very, very grateful to Western Power for coming to these events now. We've been trying to get them to come for ages. We think they have an enormous amount of very relevant and useful information to pass on to contractors. So Gav, thanks very much again for coming. That one's yours. There you go.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Aidan, for the invite. Always happy, the inspection group wanting to get more involved with the trade, to try and help the trade along, and also to try and make it as safe as possible for everyone out there within the trade. So just a bit about the inspection group, made up of inspection manager, 4 team leaders, so we've got 3 inspection team leaders and 1 admin team leader. Each team contains about 7 inspectors with the team leader. We complete inspections as per the inspection system plan, which is an agreement between Western Power and the state regulator, or Building Energy. We complete inspections as per the plan under domestic, industrial, commercial, high voltage, renewable energies and effective installations. So the renewable energies one's becoming bigger and bigger all the time with the advantages of technology in that regard. We also do investigations into electric shocks and fires that have been reported to us by DFIS of being an electrical origin. And we also provide assistance to energy safety in serious incidents involving electricity. And probably the less, well, not nice part of the job is we also have to deal with fatalities. In my time, I've been an inspector about 12 years. I've had to attend about four or five fatalities. Not particularly pleasant, because quite often the victims are still actually present on the site, and we assist the regulator, B&E, and also the coroner in finding out what's gone wrong. So probably not something we really want to be involved a lot in. So the better we can make things safe, the less of that side of it we've got to go to. So just a bit of an example of the inspection system area. So we look after virtually the entire southwest corner of WA. 3 teams, north, central and south. So I'm the south inspection team leader. So as you can see, quite a large area is covered off by each of the inspection groups. So quite a bit of work involved in keeping that all running. So just a bit of information to pass on to the contractors. A while ago, Building Energy actually released the audit sheet that they carry out on contractors. And this audit sheet was just sort of to try and help contractors along to what were their requirements under the regulations. So if you can imagine, the electrical licensing regulations, a very legal document. Not everyone is a lawyer, and it's not always easy to understand these things. So Energy Safety actually carries out the audits. I don't know if anyone here has had an audit carried out on them by Energy Safety. Yep, they virtually turn up, and virtually what they're looking at is your business practices of the electrical contractor. So they're going through and looking at how you conduct your business in terms of the regulations. In the bulletin number 78, April 2017, they actually released what they actually carry out when they carry out the audits. So that's a really good document to use. It's just a plain English version of the regulations. So it just lets you know straight away what you need to do. So if you were to take that document, apply it to your business, say once every 12 months, it's sort of like a health check for your business, just to make sure you're complying to the relevant regulations. So some of the things that were contained within the bulletin there are around advertising, apprentices, business, electrical safety certificates, invoices and licensing. So virtually what Energy Safety do is that they'll sample your work. So they'll have a look at, say, around 20 invoices, and they'll say, show us the information for those invoices. So they're looking then at notices of completion, electrical safety certificates, that you've then carried out that work correctly. They're also then looking at your log of electrical workers. Have you got a list of all the workers that you're employing, a copy of their licence, their EW number, expiry date of their licence. So you can always make sure that they have a valid licence. Invoices, that the invoices have been correctly filled out, and along those lines, and also licensing. So as I say, keeping a log of electrical workers, making sure the guys are up to date. Then also go through, say, notices of completion, making sure that correct notices have been submitted for the work, and also any other business practices that may be contained. So it's just a really good document to use. Apply it to your business around every 12 months, and it's just a bit of a health check for your business. So another topic that comes up quite regularly is when and where to submit a notice of completion. It's something that we see a lot of in our print queues. When you guys submit a notice of completion, comes into Western Power, we then sample it for inspection, and then we carry out the inspections for that work. Some of the notices we get don't necessarily need to be there. So again, Energy Safety released this in bulletins, I think it was 78, and it gives a pretty good idea of when and where to issue a notice of completion. So not all work needs to be issued with a notice of completion. So a lot of the work and a lot of the confusion comes around is where contractors think they need to put in a notice of completion when they've worked on 2 or more final subcircuits, when it's really installing more than one new final subcircuit. So for example, if you go and do a kitchen renovation and you're just moving the power points around, moving the lights, maybe installing a couple of new socket outlets, that's only a safety certificate. Doesn't need to be a notice of completion. If you go to a switchboard and you install one RCD, again, that's only an electrical safety certificate. More than one RCD is then a notice of completion. If you're upgrading the protection of the switchboard, that is a notice of completion. So this chart gives a very good idea of where and when to put those notices in. We've also been speaking to Building Energy about trying to make some smarts into the notice of completion. Because it's now an electronic form, when you look across the details that are in there, it actually lists their number of new circuits installed. So one of the suggestions that has been made, still working on it, hopefully it will happen in the future, is that if you put 0 or 1, and that's all you've done, it'll then only take you then to an electrical safety cert. It won't actually allow you to fill the notice of completion out. So just to try to put a few smarts behind the form to make it so that then some of those decisions are sort of taken away. And it just helps then everybody. You're not having to do paperwork you don't have to do, and then we're not getting jobs into our print queues which don't necessarily need to be there. So just a couple of more examples there of where notices may or may not be required. So again, a very good document there that B&E put out there in their bulletin. If you have that in your office, it's a bit of a rough guide to where and when you need it.
Wasn't that updated recently?
The recent, virtually, it's the only update that was really made was around the regulation. The regulation was made a bit clearer.
It looked like 2 copies of it. I'm sure there was one very recent.
No, that pretty much hasn't really changed a hell of a lot. So some of the defects that we find from around the place when we're doing our inspections. So the data that's up on the screen right now, so this is data taken from the 1st of July 2019 to the 30th of June 2020. Total serious defects 672. Fire seal still tops the list, 335. It is a bit frustrating from the inspector's point of view that we're still finding the sealing of switchboards out there. 335 is still a lot for something that really is, it should be done. It just, we sort of are a little bit at a loss of why it's still being found as a serious defect. Other defects, 2,965 and WAR 244. So when you look at it across a whole, just under 97,000 tickets there received, 24,000 inspections carried out, so quite a hefty workload there for the inspectors going through looking at the jobs. 3,881 defects, 2,500 orders, but still top of the list there is the fire seals. So yeah, really, it sort of really shouldn't be there, the fire seal one. If you take the fire seal one out, industry's not doing too bad. So then when you look through some of the serious defects, apart from the fire seal one, we're still finding exposed live parts going around the building site. So you'll find we'll go and do a house inspection, and one of the ways we do the inspection is we actually do a lap around the outside of the house, lap inside the house, just try to see what we can sort of see. Look inside the cupboards, and we may find a cable that hasn't been terminated for a dishwasher outlet. So unfortunately, we've had to find these, and so correct testing and checking hasn't been carried out. Probably one of the biggest ones that's still creeping in there is the no MEN 1Cs. Unfortunately, the rule book has got the rule in Section 8 there, where if it's a circuit is protected by an RCD, you no longer have to do a fault loop test. However, there's nothing worse as an inspector when we find all the circuits are protected by RCD. We go there to do the inspection, take the escutcheon cover off, and the MEN's not in place. We then do the fault loop to prove that as well via the instrument, and we get an over-range result. When we then speak to the contractor about it, first question we get from the contractor is, we don't have to do that anymore. You look at their test sheet, and there's nothing again worse when you look at their test sheet, and on the test sheet they're actually written their fault loop NA, not applicable. So that one there is a critical one. We really can't stress it any more. You really still need to do that fault loop. The fault loop also is covered off in Section 2 and Appendix B of the standard. So when you're reading the AS3000, try not to read it in isolation. Have a look at the other parts of the rule book to see what else you may need to be doing. Because if you read it in isolation, you can come a bit unstuck when you're doing that. So also the fault loop as well also helps with, if your fault loop reading is correct, then your volt drop is going to be pretty much in the range as well. And it's also ensuring that your earth is continuous back through to the board. So some of the other ones there, we're still finding RCDs not being fitted to all circuits. So one of the things, when you do a switchboard upgrade, if you're only doing the power and light on the switchboard, actually write that on the notice of completion, that you've only done power and light. If you write switchboard upgrade, as an inspector, we're going to be expecting to see the switchboard upgraded. So if we then turn up there and the stove's is not on an RCD, the bore pump's not an RCD, then you'll be getting an order from us, because as far as we're concerned, it's written on the notice of completion, switchboard has been upgraded. So if you're only doing certain components on that board, list it on the notice. When you look at the notice of completion as well, please fill it out so it actually covers off what work you've done. Try to be as descriptive as possible so that we know what you've done. Because if you get too generic with what you put on there, there may be multiple contractors on site. So we might be looking at work which you may not have done. So try and keep it to exactly what you've done on the notice of completion. So some of the other ones we've then found, PV systems. PV systems are getting more and more around the place, and we're finding that they haven't been labelled correctly. So every PV system, when the contractors put it in, comes with a label kit. If you're either not got that label kit or the label kit is incomplete, don't submit your notice of completion, because technically the work's not complete until all those labels are in place. So just keep that in mind, that again, the work is not complete unless everything's been completed. Once it's all completed, you can then put your notice of completion in. So some of the breakdown of the rules then, the defects. So Section 1, we don't see a lot around Section 1, but one of the main ones we sort of see is ensure electrical equipment is installed as per manufacturer's instructions. So something that we're sort of seeing from Sparkies and that around the place is that they'll go to a job and the consumer or the owner of the property is the ones providing the equipment to be installed, particularly around LED downlights, bought them offline. So do not do that unless you've got a good set of instructions there to show you how these things are to be installed. It's not illegal for them to give them to you to install, but if you install them and something happens, then you're the one that'll wear it because you've installed it. So just be mindful of that. Anything that's purchased from overseas may not meet Australian standards. And we all know certain countries of the world are very good at copying things and also instructions. So Section 2, cable entries into switchboards. So if you go to a switchboard, you've dropped a couple of new cables into the switchboard, there might be 2 other holes in the switchboard. Those 2 holes also need to be sealed. You don't just seal the one hole that you've dropped your cable through. You've got to make sure that you've sealed the other holes as well, because you were the last one there. The other thing that's also advisable with fire seals is take a photo of that. So if you've actually been there and sealed the board, take a photo to demonstrate that you've sealed the board. Because what can then happen, particularly on a new house, and I don't mean to take any offence to aircon installers, but they're very good at knocking fire seals out. They've only got one circuit that they're installing, so they just put a electrical safety certificate in. Their work doesn't get inspected a lot because of their lack. They don't put the notices in because they're not required, and they actually knock the fire seal out. We then come along to do the inspection, open up the escutcheon cover, and no fire seal. So take a photo of it. Particularly any part of the installation that could be actually influenced by another trade. Tilers are another one. They get a cracked tile, they take the power point off, repair the tile, and then they put the power point back on and they reverse the polarity. So again, take photos of those areas where it possibly could get interfered with. Yep.
When you go to do an inspection, do you actually look at the safety certificates mentioned in that meter number previously as well?
So, yep.
So, for instance, if someone's been there, you've done your notice of completion, it takes a bit of time to get the inspection sometimes. If someone has to submit a safety certificate for that property afterwards, are your inspectors aware of that before they go there? Or?
So the question's around, do we look at electrical safety certificates for other workers that have been there?
So as said, the aircon guy puts in, does the safety certificate, said notice of completion.
Yeah.
They
So
were there previously after, do the inspectors go there, do they have a reference for that meter number, the safety certificate as well?
So the electrical safety certificate we don't actually see. The electrical safety certificate is between the owner and the contractor.
It's online, mate, through the same portal.
So but we don't actually see a copy of that. So the only thing that we see are notices of completion. If we have to look into anything further, we will then ask to see the electrical safety certificate from the contractor. But generally, we do not see the electrical safety certificate. That's purely between the customer and the EW.
On the fire seals, is there anything that you've actually stipulated that we have to use for the fire seals? I remember something about 400 degrees silicon.
So virtually the question around, is there any stipulation about what type of sealant to use as a fire sealant? Virtually as long as it meets the criteria and has been declared a fire sealant. So you have to look at what it states on its instructions to what it can be used for. The other thing as well is also circuit arrangement. Just make sure your circuits are arranged, circuit breakers are correctly rated for the cable size, and then and any RCDs that are fitted, that they're fitted to the appropriate circuits. Section 3, mechanical environment considerations, supports and fixings. Inspectors do still have a look up in the ceiling occasionally. We don't get up into the ceilings because we're not allowed to, because we're alone pretty much by ourselves most of the time. But we still do have a look up in the ceilings. The last thing we want to see is cables looped, just drooping from the rafters.
As the crow flies.
As the crow flies, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, make sure everything's fitted off. 413s are fitted off. Your junction boxes are fitted off, and your cables are all clipped in place. So Section 4, and this is where probably more the overseas items come through, is make sure that the electrical equipment is fit for purpose and any influences it might be exposed to. So a lot of the stuff that comes in from overseas isn't actually built to Australian conditions, to the heat in our roofs over summertime. So just be aware of that if you do get any purchases like that, make sure it complies to the requirements of our environment. Section 5, earthing systems. Again, MENs, there's nothing worse as an inspector. Your heart really drops when you take that escutcheon cover off and you see the MEN not there. What contractors also have to realise is that if we do the look at all the matters of how it's occurred, we then refer this through to Building and Energy. This could take 2 years to get any sort of decision from B&E to whether or not it's going to proceed to prosecution. So that's a big chunk out of your life that you're sitting there worrying about where this is going to go. Now, it doesn't happen in all cases, but I have had one guy that we had to do an investigation on. His employer was worried about him because he actually started becoming that depressed that they actually had to place him on suicide watch because he was that stressed out. All he wanted was the matter done with. He was quite happy to pay the price for the infringement that he had to pay. He put his hand up, admitted it all, everything like this. But the regulator wasn't interested. He just joined the queue. So you've got to look at that. If you've carried out correct checking and testing, you'll virtually never hear from an inspector. But if you haven't carried out correct testing and checking, we go there and we find something wrong, 2 years out of your life. It could be there for a long time. The last case that just was mentioned in Building Energy's bulletin, the guy that reverse polarityed the meter down in Golden Bay, that was one of my investigations I did. That took over 4 years to go from the time we found it to the time when the courts actually finalised it. So that's 4 years out of that guy's life. So it takes a hell of a long time to progress through. So do your checks and tests, have a good check sheet, record your test results, and you'll virtually never hear from an inspector. So Section 6, restricted zones. As I've sort of mentioned at the last couple of talks, houses have got a lot smaller, the zones haven't. So just keep that in mind that, you know, bathrooms are getting smaller, en-suites are getting smaller. The other thing as well, never believe a builder when they say the shower screens are going in tomorrow, because they never do. And we turn up and there's no shower screens in there. The other thing too that you might want to start doing as well is take a photo of the basin that's been installed, because homeowners change their mind. So the basin that was there the day you installed the socket outlet could be changed. So they then could have put a bigger basin in, which all of a sudden you were within the zones. So again, take photos of your finished work. So Section 7 is becoming quite apparent now around, particularly with renewable energies coming in. And Section 7 also calls up a lot of other standards around the place. So 2067, high voltage standard, 3012, the builders pole standard, renewable energy, so 40777, 5033, the new battery standard 5139. These are all called up in Section 7. So if an inspector's order is issued around these ones, these are defects, it'll be a clause from Section 7, and then in the main body of the order it will then list the other types of the defects as from the other standards. So Section 7 is becoming more and more relevant, particularly with the renewable energies coming through. So Section 8, probably the biggest one for electricians, checking and testing. And it's one of the things that all workers have to do is check your work, carry out the appropriate checks and tests, and as an employer, that you give your workers time to carry out the checks and tests. Also too, that's the checking and test sheet that you have. If the meter that you're using gives you a result, write that result down. Try to avoid tick and flick, circles, all this sort of stuff, because that can be done by the apprentice on the way to the next job. So if the meter gives you a result, write it down. If it gives full scale, so if you're doing a mega check and your mega maxes out at 500 megohms, write 500 megohms, because there's no such thing as infinity. So make sure your check and sheets are robust, based on Section 8, based on the mandatory checks. And again, you base your check sheets on that mandatory test and the flow chart on the other page. Then again, you won't hear from an inspector, or you might only get an order for just a couple of minor bits and pieces. But checking and testing has to be done. And that's pretty much it. If anyone has got any questions.
What's your take on PowerPoints in Dunny for a bidet?
For a bidet? So virtually you've got to look at it's not a basin. So if you look at the same sort of setup for, say, a dishwasher underneath a kitchen sink, same sort of scenario. You can have virtually a socket outlet and almost a tap sitting right next to it.
So if I stuck to the basin rule, I'd be fine?
You should be pretty much fine, yep.
So what about the system? You wouldn't worry about it because that's enclosed?
No, it's mainly based around basin. So virtually if you base it on the diagrams that are in AS3000.